You step outside on a cold morning. Within seconds, before you have had time to think about it, your muscles begin to tremble. Not because you decided to move them, not because you lost control, because something inside your body made a calculation you were never consulted about and issued a command you had no choice but to follow. So here is the question worth sitting with for the rest of this video. What if your body already knew you were in danger and had already started fighting back before you even felt the cold reach you? And here is what will surprise you. Shivering is not a sign that the body is failing to cope with the cold. It is one of the most precisely engineered thermal responses the human body possesses. But it does something most people would never guess. And before we reveal what that is, what do you think shivering is actually doing inside your body? Leave your best guess in the comments now. Let's see how many people get it right before the science explains it. Before we go further, if you enjoy uncovering the hidden science behind everyday experiences, consider subscribing to Why Decoded. Every week, we decode another mystery your body has been quietly running without you. To understand what's really happening, you have to start with a number: 37 degrees Celsius. This is the approximate core body temperature the human body works continuously to maintain, not as a preference, but as a biological requirement. The enzymatic reactions that sustain cellular function, the signaling cascades that allow neurons to fire, the processes that keep organs working, all calibrated to operate within a narrow temperature range. A core temperature that falls even a few degrees below normal can impair these processes significantly. The body's response to this threat is coordinated by a region of the brain called the hypothalamus, a small but functionally critical structure that acts as the body's central thermostat. The hypothalamus continuously receives temperature information from thermoreceptors in the skin, the spinal cord, and deep tissues, comparing incoming data against an internal set point. When the signals indicate core temperature is falling, the hypothalamus initiates a sequence of responses designed to restore it. Shivering is one of the most powerful. But here is the first crack in what you thought you knew. Shivering is not what most people assume it is. Most people believe it's the body failing, muscles losing their composure under stress. That's layer one, the common belief. Here's why it's incomplete. The shiver reflex descends from the hypothalamus through the brainstem to the motor neurons controlling skeletal muscle, causing muscles in the trunk, shoulders, and neck to contract and relax in rapid, oscillating cycles. These contractions are not designed to produce motion. They are designed to produce heat. When muscle fibers contract, a significant portion of the energy used is released as heat rather than mechanical work. During shivering, this inefficiency becomes an advantage. The rapid cycles generate thermal energy continuously, releasing it into the tissue and bloodstream and delivering it back toward the body's core. Current estimates suggest shivering can increase heat production several times above the resting rate, activating automatically within seconds of the hypothalamic signal. The body is not shaking because it is struggling. It is shaking because it is working. Except, shivering is never the first thing the body tries. And that's where the mystery deepens. Here is something that changes how most people think about this. Before shivering begins, the body has already been attempting to conserve heat through a different mechanism, one that is entirely invisible: vasoconstriction. When skin temperature drops, the blood vessels near the surface of the body narrow significantly, reducing blood flow to the skin and extremities. This limits the amount of warm blood circulating to the body's surface, where it would otherwise lose heat rapidly to the surrounding environment, and redirects it toward the vital organs at the core. This is why the hands and feet become cold before shivering begins. The body has already made a choice: protect the core, even at the expense of the periphery. Shivering begins when vasoconstriction alone is no longer sufficient, when the thermal threat is significant enough that conservation is not enough, and active heat generation becomes necessary. The shiver is not the first response to cold. It is the escalation. So by the time you ever feel yourself trembling, your body has already run through an entire chain of silent decisions without you. And this is where everything changes, because shivering is not only triggered by cold. Now, why do we sometimes shiver when we are not cold at all? Most people have experienced this: a moment of sudden fear, the aftermath of a medical procedure, the onset of a fever, even occasionally an unexpected emotional experience. And the body shivers, despite a normal or even elevated ambient temperature. Each of these situations involves the same neural architecture, but triggered through a different pathway. The surprising part is what fever reveals about shivering, because it turns out that during a fever, the body is not losing control of its temperature. It is deliberately changing it. A fever is not simply a rise in body temperature. It is a deliberate upward adjustment of the hypothalamic set point, driven by immune signaling molecules called pyrogens, released in response to infection or inflammation. When the set point rises, the hypothalamus registers the body's current temperature as lower than it should be, even if that temperature is objectively normal. The hypothalamus responds exactly as it would to genuine cold. It initiates vasoconstriction and triggers shivering, attempting to raise core temperature to meet the new elevated set point. This is why shivering and chills are often the first sign of a developing fever. The body is actively working to reach a higher temperature that the immune system has determined is appropriate for fighting infection. The shivering during fever is not a symptom of the cold. It is the body generating heat on purpose. Layer by layer, the picture is getting clearer. The trembling was never random. It was never a malfunction. It has been a calculated response the entire time, just triggered by different alarms. But the body has another trick, and this one surprises almost everyone. Shivering in response to fear or strong emotion involves overlapping but distinct neural pathways. The autonomic nervous system, activated during acute stress, can produce brief muscle trembling through mechanisms that intersect with thermoregulatory circuits. Current evidence suggests this is not primarily a thermoregulatory response, but reflects the broad physiological activation of a strong stress or startle response. The exact mechanisms remain under active investigation. Here's what most people never realize. Not everyone's shiver reflex works the same way, and the reasons why reveal something unexpected about the body's design. Why doesn't everyone shiver the same way? Body composition plays a meaningful role. Muscle mass influences how effectively shivering generates heat, while subcutaneous fat affects how urgently it becomes necessary. Age also matters. The shivering response becomes less robust with advancing age. One reason older adults are at higher risk of hypothermia. Individual variation in thermoreceptor sensitivity and the hypothalamic set point itself also contributes to differences in when and how intensely shivering begins. It gets stranger, because shivering is not even the only way the body generates heat from within, and the alternative reveals something remarkable about how we begin life. Shivering is not the only mechanism the body uses to generate heat without movement. In infants, who cannot yet shiver effectively because their neuromuscular control is still developing, the body relies heavily on a different process called non-shivering thermogenesis, driven primarily by a specialized tissue called brown adipose tissue. Brown fat converts chemical energy directly into thermal energy without the need for muscle contraction. Adults retain small deposits that current research suggests remain metabolically active, though their significance in adult thermoregulation continues to be investigated. Shivering, then, is not one isolated reflex. It is one visible layer of a much larger overlapping system of thermal defenses, each triggered at a different threshold, each protecting the body's core in its own way, all coordinated by the same silent decision-maker in the brain. Which brings us back to where this all began. Return for a moment to that cold morning, the muscles beginning to tremble before you had made any decision at all. What felt like a loss of control was actually the final, visible step of a response that had already been running for longer than you realized. Vasoconstriction first, quietly protecting your core, and shivering only once that silent defense was no longer enough. Your body had already calculated the deficit, already chosen what to sacrifice and what to protect, already decided that conservation alone would not be enough. And before you ever noticed the cold had reached you, it had already begun to fight back. What looked like your body losing control was actually your brain protecting you long before you even realized you were in danger. Now, go back and check your prediction. Was shivering what you expected it to be? And here is the question worth leaving with. The next time you feel that trembling begin, cold morning, sudden fever, unexpected chill, which part of this surprised you most? Leave it in the comments. We read every one. If you're curious about how your mind and our world really works, subscribe to Why Decoded, because everything has a reason. We just haven't decoded all of them yet.